Coaching Assignment 1: Roles, Responsibilities, Skills and Techniques. Patrick O'Halloran, OHA 18001642. The first coach is Bob Belichick. I'm going to talk about a role first. For a coach, one role is being an innovator. This is when a coach finds a way to succeed through personalising their own style of play, or finding a new way to play or get their performer to play. The coach must be creative to be a good innovator in order to find ways to win that have never been found. An example of a coach who is a good innovator is the New England Patriots NFL team's coach, Bob Belichick. He has won 6 Super Bowl titles with his team. This takes a lot of creative thinking and innovation to find new ways to coordinate his team's offensive and defensive line in order to outsmart the opposition is an incredible feat. And to do it consistently over so many years makes him one of the best innovators. One responsibility of a coach is health and safety. This is an important one, as it means that they are in charge of ensuring that their athletes are always safe and are not put at risk. The coach has a duty of care for his players and must adhere to a standard of reasonable care. This includes things such as making sure that the equipment is suitable and safe, the facilities are appropriate, as well as lots of other duties. Bob Belichick is a coach that shows that he takes lots of responsibility when it comes to health and safety. In the industry of American football, an extremely physical sport, it is important that the players are as safe as possible. The fact that he is able to maintain a championship-winning side all year round shows that he makes sure his players are not overworked, put at risk, and are well looked after. An example of a skill that a coach must possess is organisation. This is when a coach makes sure that everything is well prepared so that things can run smoothly. This could include sorting out facilities, equipment, players, sessions, or anything else that has an impact on their team or players' performance. They must take everything into account so they are ready for any situation that might arise. Bob Belichick is a good example of an organised coach. His squad can consist of 63 players at one time. As he is at the elite level, they train every day. Therefore, as the coach, he has to sort out sessions that work on different aspects of the game and keep his players motivated. He also has to cover everything else that goes into working at the elite level of sport. For these reasons, he is a good example of a coach with the top organisation skills. Steve Holland. Another role of a coach is being a friend to the players that they work with and around. To the players that they work with and around. This means being approachable and easy for them to talk to. The players must feel that they are able to come to their coach and talk about whatever they need to talk about. This must remain professional, however. The coach has to make sure that they are not to be friendly with his players, otherwise they will lose that respect they should have for each other. An example of a coach who shows the role of a friend is Steve Holland, the assistant coach at the England national football squad. The players are able to talk to him in a very relaxed way, and they feel comfortable talking to him, but they also recognise that he is in charge, so therefore they show him the proper respect. Coaches at all levels have a responsibility to look after any legal obligations that their job requires. This is making sure that first aid is looked after. This may mean taking first aid courses. Forms that athletes need to fill out before competing are completed. DBS checks and safeguarding is all in line alongside many other things. Being responsible for keeping a tight ship and not letting anything be forgotten or unaccounted for. Steve Holland would have to make sure that all the players in the squad are DBS checked and have gone through all relevant safeguarding checks before they are able to complete national squad duties, such as visiting schools and working with children, for example. As well as this, he would have to make sure that all his players have been given international clearance and are able to play overseas. This shows he's responsible for legal obligations. For a skill that a coach must have, communication is one of the most vital. Coaches must be able to give and receive information all of the time, both verbal and non-verbal. It is extremely important for a coach to be able to pass on their thoughts through both words and non-verbal gestures. Coaches have to know when they have been talking for too long and when they may be confusing their players. Steve Holland shows great aspects of this skill, as he has to communicate well with lots of different people, as well as relay important information to players and other members of staff. For example, he has to make sure that the players know the team tactics whilst also receiving information on the players from the S&C coaches as well as physios, etc. All this information coming in at once, he has to be able to communicate well to lots of different people. For a third role of a coach, there is being a role model. Sorry, this is about Boris Becker now. This is where the coach is someone that the players, athletes look up to. The coach must set an example and be a person that earns respect through both the way they behave as well as their successes. Being a role model is important for a coach, as if they are not, then why should the performance they are working with listen to what they say? An example of a coach who is a role model is Boris Becker. He's a tennis coach. He's a role model because of how successful he was when he played and the hard work that he put in to become successful. The athletes that he coaches will look up to him as he has achieved what they are aiming for. Coaches must also be responsible for having a good knowledge of the coaching environment. This is knowing that where everything is, understanding the layout of where they are, as well as less obvious things like assessing possible risks and dangers. In order for a coach to take care of his responsibility, he or she must have experience of coaching in such an environment. Boris Becker is a good example to use. As a coach that has played at the highest level in his sport, his knowledge of the coaching environment will be second to none. He will know where every necessary bit of equipment is, as well as the court itself. This will help him to coach the athlete efficiently. For example, as a competitor who won Wimbledon, he has a player in the tournament that he is coaching. He will have the knowledge of that specific tournament to be able to give the good advice and information. As a coach, you must have good problem-solving skills. This means that you must be able to find a solution when confronted with something that you did not expect and could possibly be a hindrance. Good coaches will be able to do this quickly and effectively, seeing the problem before rapidly finding a way to get around it. At all levels, there will be problems that need solving, from a double booking of a training field at non-elite level to a long injury list at elite level. In both cases, it requires the coach to find a solution. Boris Becker as a coach at elite level will encounter problems. For example, if the athlete he is coaching is making too many unforced errors off of their serve, he will have to find a way to correct this in their game. This can be done by watching the technique of the player and finding any errors before coaching them to improve their serving style. The final example of a role that a coach plays is being a motivator for his or her players and competitors. This is to make sure that the people the coach is working with enjoy the sport and feel positive and excited to come and play. This can be done by just providing a good atmosphere for them to develop in, as well as giving them good feedback and always challenging them to learn. By giving athletes new challenges, they will remain motivated. An example of this in real life is Eddie Jones, the English national rugby team head coach. He has to be able to keep a large squad of rugby players motivated to play and train at their highest level every time he works with them. When Jones took over as head coach, the squad would have been demotivated after an unsuccessful World Cup in their home country. Since then, the team has been performing very well. This shows how Jones has been able to motivate his players and has created a good environment for them to get back to the top level of their game. The final example of a responsibility of a coach is professional conduct. This is important as a coach, as you must show good ethics and morals, workplace conduct, respect, promote fair play, and to also reward effort over skill. If a coach does not show professional conduct, then their players will also be unprofessional, as the coach must set a good example. Eddie Jones shows great professional conduct as head coach. He remains respectful and promotes fair play in the game as in the sport of rugby, anything less is not accepted. In his squad selection for the 2019 Rugby World Cup in Japan, Jones also showed how he rewards effort over skill by selecting a very young, inexperienced team, but with players who work extremely hard. The final skill that a coach must have is time management. In order to stay on top of the busy schedule that they have with training and competitions, by being able to manage time efficiently and effectively, the coach can get the most out of the athletes that they work with. Good coaches will never be late, but early, so that they can get set up before players arrive, so that they can get going as soon as possible. As well as this, they will not waste time on things that are not necessary. If a team is good at passing but bad at tackling, then the coach will focus more time on tackling in order to make improvements. Eddie Jones does this really well. As a national team coach, he does not get loads of time to work with his players. Therefore, he must manage the time well so that he gets the most he can out of the players in the short time he has. Techniques. First technique of a coach is diaries and logbooks. This technique helps coaches to make notes and reflect on sessions and games that they have been a part of. They are able to write down how they might change the practice or what they might do better in a game with their players. It is a very useful technique for a coach who wants to constantly work on tailoring what they do to the people that they are working with, focusing on what happened, what went well, and then what needs improvement, as well as considering any comments that were made by the athletes, makes for notes that can be used in a productive way. Positive of this technique is that you can record any information you want. Therefore, usually it is an honest opinion of what you have seen and felt. This means that any progress you see from the diary is trustworthy. A negative, however, is that it only takes into account your feelings. This means that if you're having a bad day and believe that the session or performance was rubbish, then this is what you will record in the diary. Someone else, however, who is feeling good and having a good day, their opinion on what they saw might be completely different, and it is important to take multiple opinions into account. Technique number 2, performance profiles. This technique is used when an athlete is not performing to their best, and the coach intervenes by creating a profile for them to help them improve. How it is done is the coach asks the performer about how they feel about the sport they are playing and gets them to rate their attributes. This will then create a visual image of what the performer sees as strong or weak in his or her game. This profile can then be used to create a program for the athlete that puts emphasis on their weaker areas of their performance. Positive of this is that as the coach, you get to work closely with the performer, giving them the opportunity to really narrow in on what they need to improve. This sense of attention that the athlete will get could motivate them to perform better. This is good for you as a coach, as you get the desired outcome just by implementing this technique. A negative could be that it relies on the performer being self-aware enough to critique himself or herself in a way that reflects them truly. Some people will find it difficult to state things they like about how they perform, whereas others will find it hard to state things that need improvement. Number 3, fitness testing. A coach will use this technique to see where their player athletes are physically strong and physically not so strong. By testing the components of fitness, the coach is able to gain a better picture of the athlete's general fitness levels. For example, a gymnast should score well on the sit and reach test for flexibility. If they do not, then the coach will instantly be able to see that they have to work on the flexibility of the athlete. As well as this, fitness tests are a good way to monitor progression for a coach. By doing testing at the start, middle, and end of the year, you should be able to see clear progress in all the scores if they are training properly. Positive of fitness testing is that it can motivate the performers by setting them goals and targets to reach before the next tests. For example, if a basketball player scores 1 meter 50 on the vertical jump, a target of 1 meter 55 could be set for the next time they test him. This will drive the player to work hard to improve. A negative could be that the tests are not realistic to all sports and are also not done in the same environment as where the sport is played. For a footballer who completes lots of sprints, jogs, and walks in a game, the bleep test will not be suitable as it is just continuously running. It's also over the same distance, so it's just not very realistic. Distinction 1. Responsibilities D1. The most important responsibility of a non-elite coach is the knowledge of the coaching environment. This is because they are more often than not, the only person responsible for finding a facility, looking after kit, and pretty much organising everything. However, at elite level it is less important as there are lots of people around to get the necessary things put in place. The responsibility does not just fall onto the coach. This is why it is less important. The most important responsibility of an elite coach is professional conduct, as when they are representing a club or country that has lots of eyes watching them, it is key to maintain a professional manner. At the highest level, there will be a lot of money involved from sponsors and owners, so you must keep a professional attitude at all times, or you risk losing a lot of investment. This is not so important at the non-elite levels, as there are less people watching, the stakes are not as high, and the consequences for poor conduct are not as big. Therefore, the coaches at non-elite are often less professional because they do not have the responsibility of millions of pounds worth of millions of pounds worth of money resting on how they behave. They are less responsible.